This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's Check the Report podcast brought to you by The Athletic. Premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Listeners of this podcast can save 30% off the first year of an annual subscription by going and visiting theathletic.com/DSP. This podcast is also brought to you by Podomatic, our host site. Vito, do you know that we've recorded well over 1,000 podcasts? We would not have been able to grow to the level of success if we didn't have quality audio, a quality host site to place all of our podcasts. So if you're looking to start a brand new project, you're thinking, wow, I saw Vito at the Tigers game. He's covering Alan Trammell.
I was there. Wow, right?
You can reach that level of success if you have a good host site. So definitely go and check out Podomatic.com. Get in the game.
And welcome to the latest edition of the Check the Report podcast. It seems like it's been a while, John, since we talked on this podcast for Check the Report. I am your host, Vito Jerome Churko, or Geronimo Churko, as I like to say. That is the Doc from Doc and Jock alongside me across the table in the studio as usual. John, how are you doing?
Awesome. I'm looking forward to the conversations. This is a show where we bring in awesome guests to discuss the news of the day in the world of Detroit sports. What are we bringing to the people today?
We have Rico Beard of the team 92.1 FM in Lansing joining us for some MSU conversation. And then Aaron McMann of MLive.com joining us for some Michigan football talk leading into U of M's big contest against Notre Dame Saturday night.
College football is kicking off, so we wanted to bring in the best guests to discuss the teams locally, Michigan, Michigan State. I'm looking forward to the conversations. Let's check the report.
And it is Rico Beard of the team 92.1 FM in Lansing joining us. Rico, how are you doing?
Good, man. How are you, Vito?
Very good. You know, I got to ask you first, before we dive deeply into some Sparty talk here. Have you fully recovered from the Churko and Company charity softball game? Because you got banged up. And like I told you before, I'm not liable for it, so I hope you're doing better. By now, at least.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm actually sitting up popping painkillers as we speak.
As we speak, just because of me. Oh, man.
Right, thinking, how can I sue this organization of yours?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, keep finding ways. It's not going to happen. I will not allow that to happen here. It is Rico Beard joining us on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Vito, then I'm trying to figure out how did I end up on a team full of all guys and all the two girls are on the other team.
Right?
How'd that happen?
I know. Imbalance. Competitive imbalance, man. Disparity of talent. And we got cream. We got crushed for sure. A lot of media members that I don't know if they've played, and maybe some boxers that it looked like they didn't play before, too. But John Macaroon did a very good job, my co-host producer that you spoke to before we started recording this segment. And let's get into some MSU football now, news and notes. And the conversation piece I want to start off with you this week, Rico, is about Brian Lewerke. Simply, what are your expectations for this redshirt junior quarterback coming into this season?
I think the expectations for Brian Lewerke is high. Coming back, you seem to have mastered the offense. You hopefully have worked on improving the one thing that he could not do, but you saw changes in the bowl game was he could not hit the deep pass, and in the bowl game, he was starting to hit that deep pass. That was his biggest drawback. He can get the ball around, but anything over 20 yards, he'd be struggling with. But knowing that he now knows the offense and he's now mastered the offense, I do expect high things from Brian Lewerke. You know, you can't go back to a 7-8 wins. I mean, I'm looking at him being a leader, and look, if things break correctly, and please, folks, hear what I'm saying. If they break correctly, possibly he's sitting in New York in December. But that means that Michigan State's had a successful season. But if they had a successful season, it's probably because of Brian Lewerke.
Yeah, Lewerke and L.J. Scott, the senior running back, returning for his senior season. How important is it to have Scott returning for his senior campaign?
I think it's really important. I mean, here's the thing. If L.J. Scott would have left, Madre London would not have transferred to Tennessee. So with L.J. coming back, I think everybody knew that it was his time, and this is his time to shine. This is put up or shut up time. He had a lot of fumbles last year, which I think hindered him from going to the NFL because that's all people knew him for doing was fumbling. You kind of forgot about what he did in the Big Ten championship game his freshman year. So this year allows him to get that nasty taste out of everybody's mouth and go back to show that he is the L.J. Scott of old. And if L.J. Scott is doing what he's supposed to do, I fully expect him to get about 70% of the carries under Mark D'Antonio or more, because D'Antonio has shown if he has a workhorse, he will work that horse. Javon Ringer, Le'Veon Bell, two guys who got, and Jeremy Langford were three guys that got over 90% of the carries. So if D'Antonio is happy with him and LJ is being productive, he's going to go. And the Michigan State offense was pro-style offense, but, make no bones about it, Vito. If D'Antonio has his way, he would run the ball 60 times a game.
Realistically now, in the preseason, the Michigan State Spartans have been ranked 11th. And now you've had some media members come out and say that Michigan State is overrated. You've had some media members come out and say Michigan State is underrated. What's the realistic way to approach viewing the 2018 Michigan State Spartan football team?
For those who say I would say this, with the media members, this state is divided by party lines. So chances are those who say that Michigan State's overrated probably cover or root for a team in blue. I would say this, Michigan State does not have the sexy players. We're not talking about, look at this guy and look at this guy. He was the number one kid coming out of high school. They don't have those guys. But what Michigan State has, Vito, is something that's worked for them. They got a collection of young men who work well together. D'Antonio has recruited the exact players that he wants, that he can plug and play and keep the train going. Now, he stumbled in 2016, but that was due to a whole lot of other things. But by him bouncing back and winning 10 games last year, and compared to his record in the previous seasons, I would not say that Michigan State's overrated. I can't see how you would say that, bringing back 19 starters, unless you seriously are just hating on Michigan State. That's not whether you like them or not. That's not whether you went to school or not. That's just a fact. Mm-hmm. They're bringing back everybody. So anybody who says they're overrated probably is new to this whole college football thing, or just needs people to click on their social media accounts.
They don't know what they're talking about in so many words. Maybe they're on some crazy pills. And then I think they are, too, and they get Mark D'Antonio's name still screwed up, and they call him Mark D'Antoni. I mean, Colin Cowherd just did it the other day on FS1. He's been paid all these big bucks.
Mike D'Antoni, Mark D'Antoni.
Yeah.
Messed up. It's not that hard.
No, it's not.
Here's how I know it's not that hard, because the same network can pronounce Coach Krzyzewski. Mm-hmm. If you can get Coach Pay's name right, you can't get Mark D'Antonio? Come on. You just don't care. You just don't give a damn.
No, you don't. You don't care enough about getting his name right. That's what it comes down to. And, speaking of something that's hard, D'Antonio had to make a hard decision bringing John Reschke back on the team for this year after he was left off the team last season, and for rightful reasons, in the fact that he delivered a text message using the N-word. It was a racially charged text message, and the team didn't want him to be a part of the 2017 squad, was left off the team, returning this year for eligibility year number 6 for him. What do you think about him being brought onto the MSU football team for 2018?
Well, Vito, I'm not on the team, so it really boils down to what the players in the locker room, how they feel about it. I got to look at how would I have felt at 20 compared to how I feel now. How I feel now is I probably would not have let him back on. He would have had to give me the greatest come to Jesus moment speech ever, just because of what he said. It's not to say that you can't forgive him, but it's not to say that I don't have to want to play with him. But when all the black players on the team came together and voted and said unanimously that they wanted him back, I guess it spoke volumes of they're willing to forgive. Because the irony is they don't need him. He's not going to start. It's not a position of need. As a matter of fact, D'Antonio in the press conference talked about how he's probably going to take 10 linebackers with him to travel. That's an ungodly amount. So they are so deep that it truly is, they're bringing him back because, I guess, out of forgiveness. It's not out of necessity. He's not starting. I don't see him starting anytime soon. The way, I'm not going to sit down Andrew Dowell for him. Not at all. Tyree Thompson, Brandon Randall, those guys have, Antoine Simmons, they're younger and they've surpassed him. And in the world of sports, especially college or high school sports, if you if a senior gets passed up by an underclassman, you're never getting your job back. That's just how it works.
So his role is going to be limited. I mean, no other way of saying it. His role is going to be limited this season, and really they're just bringing him back as a sign of forgiveness, like you said. I mean, for me, it would have been hard to forgive and forget. I think you can't totally forget what he did, though, too. And in so many words, once again, he's not going to probably do too much for the MSU football team this season.
Well, yeah, I do think his role is going to be limited. I do think that, I think D'Antonio spoke like special teams. They might try and get him in there, and possibly some blowout games. But, you can't build on him. He had his chance, and he blew it. And now he's getting a second chance, I guess, to kind of smooth things over and lead the right way. But, yeah, I don't think you're going to hear Reschke's name a ton. And as I told the listeners on my show, when he does come into the game, that's not one of those moments where everybody should stand up and clap for him. No, that's not a moment like that. When he comes in, it's good, but we're not clapping for him. We're not going to do what the baseball fans in Milwaukee did, for the relief pitcher who, made the idiot remarks on Twitter years ago. This isn't something you condone. When he comes in the game, he comes in the game. Please, to God, no standing ovations for this young man.
Yeah. He's just a player on the team. He deserves no round of applause. I wouldn't give him one. Doesn't deserve it. And if you do, you're condoning his behavior and him using the N-word like he did. And that's not right. It's never right. There's no rhyme or reason for it. And, Rico, I want to leave you with this. Over or under 9.5 wins from Michigan State this season?
Over.
Okay. And easily, and then also why?
I think they favorable schedule. A lot of their tough games are going to be at home, returning 19 starters. I think the most important thing is you pretty much returned everybody on offense but Brian Allen. You have a solid running game with L.J. Scott. You have a quarterback going into his second year at MSU in Brian Lewerke. Your defense is a good enough defense. I know, Michigan gets a ton of credit for what their defense was. People forget. I think Michigan State was the number 7 defense in the nation, so they're not chopped liver. I think with most of the tough games, the one that I look at that I don't think they're going to get is Penn State. Other than that, probably Ohio State will be the other game that trips them up, so that'll put them at 10 regular season wins. So we're talking regular season wins, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think Ohio State could be the game that trips them up. I think they lose at Happy Valley, and Ohio State. It all depends on how they react to this whole Urban Meyer fiasco.
Rico, I'll leave you with this. One reason why you would believe and sell us on the fact that Michigan State could win the Big Ten East.
Simply what I said. If somehow or another Michigan State can go into Happy Valley and beat Penn State again, just like last year when they knocked off Penn State, their destiny was in their own hands. Now, Ohio State throttled them in Columbus. But if they can make it to Ohio State and have a legit shot at winning, and the game is at home, I don't think it's that far out of the realm to think that Michigan State could go back to Indianapolis for the 4th time in 8 years. They're one of the top 3 teams in the East. I think it's going to be a little bit of a round robin. And, it just you're going to need a little bit of luck. You're going to need a lot of things. Hopefully when they play Penn State, it won't be another game where there's a 4.5-hour weather delay. But, if they knock off Penn State or Ohio State, they could be in a spot where their final game of the year is Rutgers, which to me, that's just a practice game. You probably get more out of the green and white game than you would out of playing Rutgers.
Uh-huh. No, I think you're right, Rico. And you know what? Once again, I'm not liable for any of your injuries. But rest up, recover fully, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for all the time, man.
Yeah, okay, whatever, man. I'll talk to you later, Vito.
Great stuff, man. Nice talking to you. Have a good one. And back here on Check the Report with Rico Beard, a guy that played in my charity softball game. You can tell very much so now. And Doc, I think you asked a good question there at the end about what is conceivable for MSU to win the Big Ten East. And he explained that it would take beating some good teams there towards the end of the season, too, for Sparty.
Yeah, off the air, I'm going to give you some critiques. I like the interview with Rico. Very well done. But I think you maybe focused in a little bit on the negatives, a little bit too much, but that's okay. I can respect
That's
that.
what I do. Yeah, baby. I don't care that you're a Sparty Pride and Sparty Man of the Year or something, but
I wasn't going to ask, but I was like, okay, I got to ask some more positive questions here and bring it back to what are the chances Michigan State could win it all? And that's
at
what
least
we do
you got
here.
that in there.
Exactly. We always enjoy Rico Beard. You can definitely listen to his radio show, 92.1 FM in Lansing, The Spartan Beat. Always a good follow, thanks to Rico Beard. And who's up next?
Aaron the Man McMann is joining us next here on Check the Report. And it is Aaron the Man McMann now joining us of MLive.com. Aaron, how the heck have you been? Because it's been way too long since we last chatted on these airwaves.
It has been. Yeah, it has been busy. Michigan started full camp about a month ago now, and it's been pretty much, nonstop ever since.
So, Aaron, people are freaking out about this fractured right foot for Tarik Black. They're up in arms. They're losing their cool over it. How should people be reacting to it? And really, how big of a blow is Black to Michigan?
Yeah, it's a complicated thing because coming into this year, Tarik Black was expected to be Michigan's probably their best receiver. Now keep in mind, he only played in 3 games last year. He caught 11 passes, I think, for 149 yards and a touchdown. But he showed a lot of promise. He had good size. He had a good grasp of the playbook. He became an obvious weapon there early in the season. So I think the fan base and the coaching staff looked at this season as being, his opportunity to kind of redeem himself. He could have had a big year last year, his freshman year. He obviously got hurt, missed the final 10 games with the fractured left foot. So in a way, it's hard to compare production just because he didn't have a ton last year, didn't play much. But in terms of ceiling and promise and everything else, I think many in this Michigan coaching staff were, expecting him to have a big year. So when you take him out of the equation, Michigan basically has what it had last year. They're going to go with Donovan Peoples-Jones again. Donovan, looked good at times last year, but there were times where he also looked like a freshman. And then you've got fifth-year senior Grant Perry. Beyond those two, you've got a lot of bodies there, but you don't have a lot of experience. So they're going to look for some guys to kind of step up. Nico Collins is a name that keeps coming up. He played a handful of games last year, but I think he had 1 catch the entire time. He's a guy he's a very Tarik Black-esque guy, similar size, similar hands, more of a possession type guy. He's going to have to make, I think, a big leap this year. He's going to have to, show that he can be a third, weapon for Michigan in the passing game. And then you got some other guys, Oliver Martin, who redshirted last year. You've got Nate Shanley, who was just awarded. He was a former walk-on. He was awarded a scholarship the other day. And then you got the tight end group. The tight end group was very productive last year between Sean McHugh and Zach Gentry. I think they combined for over 600 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns. You're going to need more production out of them as well. So I think it's going to be all hands on deck, type of mentality. They're going to need guys to step up. They're going to need more production from guys like Peoples-Jones, and they're going to rely on the old reliables over there at tight end.
And DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones, that is, might have already been the most talented wide receiver on this year's team, but now he has to almost be elite. Doesn't he have to be kind of, Aaron, to kind of make up for the loss of Tarik Black?
Yeah, he's gonna have to step it up. He looked like I said earlier, he looked good at times last year, and I think to his credit, there were times last season I can specifically remember the Wisconsin game, the Ohio State game, where opposing defenses they're basically doubling up. They anticipated Peoples-Jones getting targeted, more than any other Michigan receiver, and they tried to take him out of the game. And more times than not, they were successful. Donovan's gonna have to figure out a way to find himself more separation this year, go out for balls, and make some of those big plays that you didn't really see out of the receiving core last year. He's got more responsibility this year. He's the youth thing, I think, is the youth excuse is over. He played in almost every game last year. He's gone through this is now his second camp he's gone through. This is going to be, he's going to have to make a big leap this year.
Simply your expectations for Shea Patterson.
He's got, he came in with so much fanfare, so much hype. And some of it's warranted. He started 10 games at Ole Miss. He put up some big numbers, threw for over 3,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, in the SEC. So there's some good there. But when you dive into those numbers, a little bit more, he didn't play particularly well against some of the better SEC opponents. Of the 10 games I think he started, Ole Miss only won 4 of them. He did throw 12 interceptions in 10 games. There were, I think, 2 games where he threw 3 interceptions. So his accuracy, I question. His playmaking ability, I think, is what's going to help this Michigan offense. It's something that was lacking last year at quarterback. Obviously the offensive line struggled to block. I think that made things difficult for the quarterbacks. The receivers struggled to get open and find separation. But I think with Patterson, under center, He not only has the ability to throw the ball, as we've seen, and anyone can go watch his tape online, but he can escape the pocket and create plays that extends plays, and that's something Michigan really didn't get last year with Brandon Peters or Wilton Speight, or even John O'Corn, who was more of a Patterson-esque type guy. So he kind of opens things up a little bit for the playbook, changes things for the offense. And, I've said this to a couple of people now, but I don't think this Michigan offense could get much worse than it was last year. So with someone like Patterson under center and taking the snap, I think Michigan has no choice but to be better offensively in 2018.
How does he fare under the lights Saturday night against Notre Dame?
That's a good question. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and doesn't necessarily light the world on fire. Keep in mind this is going to be the first game of this new look offense. We keep hearing things about the offensive line being improved, and everything else. But there's going to be, I think, an adjustment period here for Shea Patterson. Keep in mind he did go through spring practice. He was here in the winter and everything else. But there's nothing like playing an actual football game with your teammates than practicing with them. There's going to be timing things. He's going to have to learn to acclimate with some of his guys. Tarik Black is no longer there, so he's going to have to find someone else or find some other folks to get involved throwing the ball. But it's I think Michigan will be happy if they can go in there, remain turnover free. Shea Patterson can move the team, and if he ends up with 180 or 200 yards passing, I think Michigan will take it. As long as they win the game, as long as they stay turnover free and move the football. And that was such a big problem last year with the offense. They struggled to move down the field. They were not efficient many times. If they can just get that from Shea Patterson, I think it'll be a win.
Who do you have in this one then? It sounds like you're thinking Michigan. You're going to pick Michigan, but give me your prediction, I guess, and give me a score or two for this game against Notre Dame.
Yeah, if you would have asked me this a couple of days ago before the injury, the news of Tarik Black's injury, I would have said Michigan for sure. I do think they squeak it out though. I think this defense and something we've talked about, all off season now, but I think this defense is a possibility of being better than it was last year. And keep in mind, it was number 3 ranked last year in the country. Their passing defense is number 1. I think this defense will keep Michigan a lot of games this year. It's just going to come down to the offense. And I think with a revamped offensive line, it sounds like things are simplified. They're playing better. They're playing more together. And Patterson under center, I think Michigan can win this game. I think it'll be a knockdown, drag-out fight. I think Las Vegas, the odds makers, have the over/under at like 48 points or something like that total. I don't see it being that high scoring. I could see Michigan winning like a 21-17 game, a 20-17 game, something like that. I think Michigan wins by one possession. I think it ends up going down to the wire. But this Michigan team has the potential to be very good. They need a lot of things to go right this season for them to win some of these games. But with with Patterson under center, the changes on offense, I think Michigan can win this one on Saturday night.
Aaron, as you know, U of M was ranked number 14 in the AP preseason poll. Fair or foul with that ranking for Michigan?
Oh, I think it's 100% fair. And in fact, I have a vote in AP rankings myself. I'm
Look at you,
State, and I had it just like that. I had Michigan at 14. I had Michigan State at 12. Michigan, a lot of hype, a lot of expectations. Obviously, the defense is going to be very good, and we've talked about that. But there's a lot of question marks on the offensive side of the ball, as I just went over with you guys. There's we've heard a lot of things, a lot of hype, a lot of positivity coming out of spring practice and fall camp. But until I see it happen on the football field in an actual game, I'm cautious about ranking this team too high. I think on paper they can be good. They are good, but 14 is about where it is where I had them. It's about what I expected them to be. Middle of the pack. I think they're 4th overall in the Big Ten behind Ohio State, Wisconsin, and who else am I missing? Michigan State. So it's right about where I had them. The Big Ten East is going to be difficult. It's going to be a tough schedule. But I think 14 is fair.
So Michigan's defense now, nobody really has concerns, but recently there's been some concerns about Rashawn Gary's health for the start of this season. What have you heard about Rashawn Gary being healthy for this season, the start of this season specifically?
Yeah, I was at Michigan had an open practice on Sunday night in Ann Arbor. They brought out the team. They're all in pads. They kind of went through individual drills, workouts, things like that. Gary was in full pads, but he didn't do much beyond that. I think he did a little bit of sprinting, but when it came to individual drills and workouts, he didn't do anything. So it sounds like he's a little banged up. Defensive line coach Greg Madison was asked about this Monday night during the weekly football coaches show for the Michigan football team. He acknowledged that, it sounded like Gary might be banged up. He didn't give any specifics, but he made it sound like Rashawn plans to play on Saturday. I think it's going to take a lot to keep him out of the game. And I think Madison equated it to a few bumps and falling down. So I don't know the extent of his injury. But the fact that he was in pads for the open practice and kind of still going through some things, and Madison's comments tell me that Gary will play Saturday. Now, whether he's 100% or not remains to be seen. But I think for him to sit out would take quite a bit.
And it is Aaron, the man, McMann of MLive.com on this week's edition of Check the Report. And Aaron, I'll leave you with this, putting you on the hot seat a little bit. Over or under 9.5 wins for Michigan this season?
Ooh, well, I would say this. I just did my predictions the other day. I have Michigan finishing 9-3. So you're right. You're right in the ballpark.
Uh-huh.
So based on my predictions, I'll go under. Obviously they went 8-5 last year. They struggled on offense. I think this team is better than last year. The problem is the schedule is so difficult. They've got Michigan State on the road. They obviously open this Saturday at Notre Dame. They've got Ohio State on the road. They got tough, home games against Wisconsin, Nebraska. A lot of things have to go right for this team to I think, get in the Big Ten title picture. So right now I'll go under 9.5 because I've got 9-3. Now if they get a few breaks, they could win 10, maybe 11 games, but right now, like I said to you guys earlier, there's just too many question marks, too many unknowns on the offensive side of the ball for me to go any higher.
Well, so many tough teams to beat on their schedule, like you said, Aaron. I mean, Notre Dame to kick off the season, MSU, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Penn State. I mean, it really depends upon how many games they win of those games that I just mentioned. And then you have the other opponents they have on their schedule. So to get to 10, which I think people really want to see Harbaugh do after going 8-5 and losing in that Outback Bowl last season, well, it's going to be tough sledding, right?
They're going to need a lot of things to go right, and I think they need to stay healthy. And obviously, Tarik Black's injury doesn't help, but they need to get a serviceable offensive line. They were near the bottom of the Big Ten and really the country in a lot of categories last year. Even if they can be, mediocre or middle of the pack in the Big Ten, I think that would do wonders for the offense. They're going to need to figure out Shea Patterson. They're going to need to find someone to step up. At wide receiver. And so if they can stay healthy and get a lot of production in their ground game, we haven't talked about that a lot, but Chris Evans and Karan Higdon, are both in theory potential, 1,000-yard rushers. Karan Higdon fell 6 yards short last year. Chris Evans rushed for over 600 yards as a true freshman. They've got a lot of ability back there, got talent at receiver. They got talent, at quarterback. It's just about putting it all together, staying healthy, and winning some of those bigger games that Michigan, hasn't been able to over the last few years.
So, Aaron, Karan Higdon has been on the podcast, so we know he'll be good this season. There's no doubt about that, Aaron. It's true, right? It has to be true, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's bulked up. He looks a lot bigger. He had an opportunity to go to the NFL draft, last year. He thought about it. I'm sure he told you guys about it. But he wanted to come back for his final year and bolster his numbers a little bit and do a little bit more. And I think for him and a lot of other guys, we spoke to Chase Winovich today as well after practice, but a lot of these guys, came to Michigan for a reason. They want to win a Big Ten championship or at least play for one and do big things. So you see some of this team is on a mission this year. They've been awfully quiet. But whether it was spring or fall camp, they haven't said a lot. It's almost like a quiet confidence. Like, they know they've got an opportunity here. And instead of, doing the talking, they're going to go out there and try and walk the walk.
Mr. Reliable, Aaron McMann, with that being said, great stuff from you today, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Great interview there with Rico Beard and Aaron McMann. Rico Beard, 92.1, The Spartan Beat in Lansing. Aaron McMann, MLive, Michigan beat writer. He's out there in the know covering the team. Great insight on this edition of Check the Report. What are your main one or two takeaways from this episode, Vito?
Well, that I'm unbiased. You're biased. No, I would say that Rico Beard really thinks that MSU, if they beat a few of those tough teams, Penn State, Ohio State, well, then maybe they're in contention for the Final Four. So I think they have a chance. They're a dark horse, I think, to make the Final Four, so to play in the college football playoff. Now, for Michigan, how reliable is Shea Patterson going to be? Now, Aaron thinks the running game will be reliable, and the O-line, how improved really will it be? Because I have to say, I have doubt about that. There are doubters out there, too, and then there are doubters about Rashawn Gary's health. I think it will be very key to see how he does against Notre Dame. Saturday night, it will be pivotal, the performance of Rashawn Gary, to see that he is fully healthy in that game against ND.
I can't wait to watch as these two teams battle early in the season ahead of their matchup October 20th. Great episode. Thanks again to our featured guest. You've listened to Check the Report podcast. If you've liked what you've listened to, definitely follow Vito at Vito Jerome. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast, the premier Detroit sports podcasting network. We thank everybody for finding us across the various platforms you can find podcasts. Thanks, everybody.
Adios.